Welcome to the garage, ladies and gents. So today's video is going to be covering the very interesting but yet frustrating process of removing seized, frozen, or rusted out U-joints, specifically the bearing caps themselves that are stuck in the yokes and will not remove from the drive shaft itself. So if you live in the Rust Belt states where you see a lot of road salt in the winter, you're going to come across this problem when taking apart the drive shaft and the U-joints. They're just not going to be compliant. They're going to give you an extremely hard time, and you might need to use special tools and methods to remove them from the drive shaft. Specifically, the bearing caps, they will not drive out, okay? They'll come about like a third of the way out, and then they're stuck there, and no matter what you do with channel locks or whatever type of vice grips, they will not come out. And the reason is because they're stuck in there, okay? The whole thing is bound up. So in the following clips, you're gonna see what it took to remove those U-joints and bearing caps. I actually had a very extreme case here in the garage where I broke the ends of the bearing caps off, and I had to use an interesting method to remove them, okay? So you'll see in the following clips what it took, but I will give you some tips right off the bat. Those clips that were keeping the bearing caps in place, those little inside-outside clips, well, they're gonna break away, and you better use sharp tools, sharp chisels. I probably sharpened my chisels, my single point one and flat chisel, probably at least 24 times throughout the whole process. I had 8 clips to remove, and if you don't use a sharp chisel, you're gonna butcher up those yoke ears. So keep a sharp chisel, keep on going to the grinder, and put a nice fresh edge on it as you're removing those. But at the same time, I still had some of those clips that were seized in there and fused to the yoke. So I'll show you in the following clips, kind of each step of the way, what it took to remove these bearing caps that were stubborn, frozen, and seized, rusted in place because of road salt and all the other things on the road in New England, in other states alike. So let's get into the actual process and let's check it out. Here is the one-piece drive shaft on the Superduty. Other Superduties might have a 2-piece main drive shaft, and you would have a carrier bearing in the center. So that's also worth replacing at the same time of doing this because you're going to be taking everything apart. But since I have a one-piece drive shaft, there's only 2 U-joints on this. So you can have one right towards the front here, right at the transfer case, and one down at the differential. So as you can see here, you don't have to do this, but I like to just mark the timing of this. That way I return it to the same spot once I disassemble it, and I keep everything exactly the same it was from factory. As well as back here, I did the same thing. We have a flange style mount with 4 bolts. These are 12mm 12 points. And as you can see, I marked this. This is kind of like overkill, but you know, one side is different than the other, so there's no way you're going to mismatch this, but it's still worth putting a line. That way you have the timing of the flange, the actual mating flange, and then the actual drive shaft itself. So I'm going to go ahead and pop out these clips with some needle nose, and then go ahead and start removing it from the front first. Okay, remove it from the front because we have the slip yoke here, and you can't really remove this easily. So I'm going to remove it here. I'm going to support it with a jack stand out back here, and then remove those 4 bolts, and then drop the drive shaft, and then bring it in the actual workshop so we can work on it in some better light and not be underneath the truck, kind of a pain in the ass. All right, so let's start with removing one of these clips. You know, these can be very difficult when they're seized in there and rusted in there, but the trick is to like kind of, you know, if it doesn't come out easily, as you can see, it doesn't want to come out. It's stuck in there, okay? You'll end up breaking the clip in there. You don't want to do that. So take either a screwdriver or a chisel, flat chisel like this, nice and sharp. I have it in a holder, but hammer and or one of these. Let's start with the screwdriver and just like tap on the inside, just like how the pliers would disengage the clip. You're going to do the same thing with the blade of the screwdriver. So just tap on the side of it, and there you go. I just broke that one. So, and that one just broke as well. So both of the tabs just broke off. Now we're gonna have to make our way around, basically curl the clip inward to break it loose. Alright, so I got this one started. Looks like it's going to work. I'm just going to keep on tapping, trying to lift it up, and it broke again. Alright, so as you can see, I only got 2 of the clips out intact. The rest are falling apart and rusted out, and they're just falling into pieces, and it's really giving me a hard time. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed with pushing this U-joint out, get these bearing caps out, and then this here is actually very problematic here. So this clip here is broken and fused itself to the inside. I don't know what happened, but between the salt and whatever, and this is the one that went bad. So there must have been a lot of heat generated, and I think it fused itself to the groove. So I have to first get this flange off of this drive shaft so I can put it in the vise and see what else has to be done. But I'm going to demonstrate here how to push out with the ball joint press tool, okay? This is going to be the easy shot. I'm going to go ahead and try to do the socket and hammer method, which is the simple method, and see if I can get the other side out. But let's go ahead and try this and see how this does. But like I said, this drive shaft, because of the New England salt, is all rusted out, and I'm telling you, each one of these clips are just breaking into pieces and just shooting across the room. Like I said, only 2 of them are intact. It's freaking crazy, but that's the way it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start cranking on this thing. Push the U-joint out. Wow, that one is tough, huh? Damn, that thing is seized in there. I'm gonna give it some light taps. See if it breaks loose. This thing is not moving. This is the one that's broken, and the bearing cap is all busted open and split. This thing does not want to move. Alright, so let me try something else. Alright, this is what it took for this thing to break loose. I was right, it was like a little bit fused, okay, because of heat. I had to use a 1-inch drive, okay, with an adapter to my impact socket. And I literally had so much tension on this thing that I was scared. So I had it just like this, okay? I had it just like this, and I was cranking on this thing, and I had so much tension on this thing that I actually threw down a blanket on top of this just in case this thing exploded, okay? Because there was a shit ton of tension going into this clamp right here to push this bearing cap out. So I'm glad it actually pushed it out, but now that's only part of the battle because now I have to disassemble it. So let me go ahead and see what needs to happen, but it took a 1-inch drive breaker bar to do the job. I knew it was seized because it wasn't coming out easy just like the other one. So let me do a disassembly on this and let you know what I think. Okay, so this side here is beyond repair. I cracked the bearing cap on both sides, and there's so much heat damage and damage to this U-joint because I drove for so long on a damaged U-joint that it's not even round on this side. It's oblong, and I have a problem here because these caps should go in by hand, and you can pull them out with a set of channel locks and twist them and they pull right out. Well, they won't do that. They're seized in there. I might have to put this in the hydraulic press. I don't know yet. I might have to do something different for this. This is not going to be the standard method at all. This is not coming out. But let's go do the other side and see if that works better with the clamp. Alright, so let's see if we have better luck with this side here. This is the front of the drive shaft. New England vehicles are very rusty and usually are a big problem to take normal parts off that you would somewhere else in the country. So everything is seized, rusted, fused together, and is a big problem to disassemble usually. So let's see what happens with this guy here. Wow, that was a lot of force. It actually moved. Okay, well, there goes that idea. Try it from this side. That was something. This thing is just popping the whole freaking way. The whole freaking way. Now it's bottomed out. As you saw, I just had to hit it with a hammer and there was so much tension that it released. See, the problem is they're seized in there. These should come loose, okay? When you put the channel locks on there, they should be loose enough to remove. That's a problem because you have to get the bearing caps out in order to remove the trunnion piece, the center piece here. And that's not happening, so let me come up with another game plan and I'll let you know. Alright guys, so here we are the next day, and last night I did not have any luck with the standard ball joint press tool. What's happening here is an extreme case. If you live in New England with really salty roads or anywhere else just like that, you're going to encounter this where the caps themselves are stuck and frozen in there. No matter how much you push on this, it does not push the cap out enough for you to grab onto it with a set of channel locks or vice grips and pull this out, because it's still stuck in there. Okay, it's not free enough for you to loosely remove it. I also went ahead and put this end in the vise and then used the drive shaft as a lever and tried to rotate it out, and it would not budge. So this is an extreme case, but as you can see here, I have another option, and this is the last resort. I'm gonna go ahead and just use a cutoff wheel and literally cut this right out. Cut the trunnion right out and pull this whole thing out. That way I can get done with it and stop wrestling and wrangling this drive shaft and beating on it with a hammer in the ball joint press tool to get it to move, and it's not moving because these caps are just not compliant. They're not doing what they should. If you have a Southern truck, they'll pop right out with a hammer and socket. That's not gonna work, okay? And then also, this end is pretty bad, but this other end is even worse, okay? This end here, I still have some of that clip fused in there, and it's stuck, okay? Same thing on this side. I had to grind it out, and it's fused in there because this is the bad side of the shaft. This side is the where it failed, okay? This was so bad that, look at that. Look how not round that is. That's the trunnion end, and it's oval shaped because there was no needle bearings left. It was completely dry in there, and it was just bouncing around and, you know, making noise when you engage the drive shaft and drive around. But as you can see here, we have another problem. Yeah, that's wide open. That's not supposed to be like that. The cap ends broke completely off and shattered when I was using all that insane tension with the ball joint press tool. So it shattered the end of the cap, the closed end, and now I have two open ends. And this is going to be a problem to take off because you rely on that closed end to push on. Well, I don't have that now. I have a sleeve in here stuck inside the yoke. Okay? Both sides. So my only option is to come in here and with the cutoff wheel and to literally just cut that right out. That way I can separate this flange, put it on the workbench, and then work on it further and possibly just cut the other end out as well, and then use the ball joint press tool to remove these cups because there'll be nothing else in the way. The trunnion won't be there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, cut these things apart. I'm sick and tired of wrestling this drive shaft, and I'm not going to dick with this thing any longer because I'm just so sick of working on this thing and I want it to be done and put the truck back together. So let's go ahead and do that. There you have it. All right, there you go. We have the trunnion out. Now I can go ahead and push these bearing caps that are stuck right out with the ball joint press tool. And that should take care of them, pushing them towards the inside. Same thing for this side. Just push them towards the center and they'll pop right out. There we have it. We got one out. Let's go do the other side. thing's just walking around like crazy. All right, there we have it. Ball joint press tool for the win. After we cut out the trunnion. What a freaking disaster and a nightmare this drive shaft has been. But I'm finally making some progress here. As you can see, I did not damage the yoke inside diameters. These bores are still intact. I did not hit them with an air chisel or any other tool on the inside to push them, because if I were to do that, I would risk the chance of destroying the inside bore, and then I would have to file and hone these inside bores to receive the new bearing cups. Look at that thing smoking. All right, there she is, all said and done. This has to go down deeper now. This is like